The silver compact in Elena Vasquez's palm held 3 grains of dried blood under its mirror. She pressed her thumb there until the glass bit her skin, and the sting brought her back to herself. She was standing in the dark, alone. Or so she thought. The Winslow Grand Ballroom had been empty for 9 months now, since the night Arthur Winslow stepped off the east balcony and let gravity do the rest. Elena knew this because she had read the police report, the obituary, and the 3-page property assessment that had landed on her desk at the Free Library of Philadelphia. The building was scheduled for demolition in 72 hours. She was supposed to be a ghost, just another conservator doing a quiet job. The missal sat open on the work table behind her. 16th century. French. Bound in calfskin that had survived wars, ocean crossings, and the radiator hiss of Philadelphia winters. But it was the back cover that held her. Someone had scratched a name into the leather with a fingernail, maybe, or the tip of a hat pin. Asterisk Marguerite Winslow. 1919. Asterisk. Her grandmother's name. Elena's thumb found the blood again. She had cut herself opening the book safe. The lock was rusted. The key had been taped to the inside lid with yellowing masking tape, and when she pulled it free, the metal edge caught her. A small wound. 3 drops on the missal's cloth wrapper. She had wiped them clean before they could stain. But 3 grains remained under the compact's mirror. She didn't know why she kept it. She only knew she couldn't throw it away. The ballroom breathed around her. Old buildings always do. Settling timbers. The groan of plaster. Somewhere, a loose window rattled in its frame. The November wind was pushing hard off the Schuylkill River, and Elena pulled her cardigan tighter. She had been here 6 hours. Her fingers were cold. Her back ached from hunching over the book. She should pack up. The demolition crew would arrive Thursday morning, and the missal would go to storage, and she would write her report, and Marguerite Winslow would go back to being a name scratched into dead leather. Elena closed the compact. That's when she heard the glass. Not breaking. Not yet. Just a soft, single note. A wine glass tapped with a fingernail. It came from the east balcony. She should have left. She should have gathered her tools, closed her case, and walked out the service entrance. That was the smart thing. The safe thing. Instead, she followed the sound. The east balcony ran the full width of the ballroom's second level. In 1911, the Winslow family had hosted the mayor here, and the governor, and a young man from New York who would later become president. Now the velvet ropes were faded. The brass stanchions had turned green. And standing at the balustrade, silhouetted against the city lights, was a man in a white dress shirt with no jacket. He held a bottle by the neck. His cufflinks, onyx and silver, she saw them catch the light, were undone. His cuffs hung loose around his wrists. His thumb moved in slow circles over a carved rose on the railing, back and forth, like he was polishing a stone. Elena's footsteps echoed on the marble. He didn't turn. The building was supposed to be empty, she said. Her voice sounded too loud, too sharp. She softened it. I was told no one would be here. The man tilted the bottle, watched the amber liquid sway. The demolition was delayed. His voice was flat, not rude, just scraped clean, like butter off a warm knife. Elena should have introduced herself. She should have explained her presence, shown her credentials, apologized for the intrusion. Instead, she stood frozen at the balcony entrance, her grandmother's compact still warm in her palm. The man took a drink. Not a gulp. Just a sip. He set the bottle on the balustrade, next to a small silver flask that had been there long enough to leave a ring in the dust. You're still holding the book, he said. Elena looked down. The missal was pressed against her chest, cradled in both arms like a child. She hadn't realized she'd brought it. She hadn't realized she'd been holding it this whole time. I'm sorry, she said. I'm Elena Vasquez, the conservator. I was hired by the estate to. I know who you are. He turned. His face was younger than the photograph suggested. In the newspaper image, Calder Winslow had looked 45 and hollow. In person, at 32, he looked like a man who had forgotten how to sleep. The estate is me, he said. I didn't fire you. Elena waited. He didn't elaborate. "Why is the demolition delayed?" she asked. Calder picked up the bottle. Not to drink. Just to hold it. His thumb found the label, peeled a corner loose. "Because I asked them to wait." "Why?" He didn't answer. His gaze drifted past her, down to the dance floor below. The parquet gleamed under the security lights. 80 years of foxtrots, weddings, debutantes. Now just wood and dust and the echo of a man falling. Elena should have left. Every instinct told her to walk away. This was not her story. This was not her grief. She was here to preserve a book, not to comfort a stranger. But her grandmother's name was carved into the leather. And her grandmother had never spoken of Philadelphia. "Mr. Winslow," she said, "may I ask you something?" "Calder." He didn't look at her. Just Calder. "Calder, did your family employ a woman named Marguerite Winslow in 1919? His thumb stopped moving. The bottle stilled in his grip. "Marguerite was my great-aunt," he said. "She died before I was born." "Why?" Elena opened her mouth. The truth sat on her tongue. She was my grandmother. She raised my mother. She told me our family came from Spain, from olive trees, from a blue door asterisk, but the words wouldn't come. "I found her name," Elena said. "In the book." She held up the missile. Calder stared at it. His jaw tightened. "She was a maid," he said. "Not family. She worked here for 3 years and then she left. My grandfather never spoke of her." Asterisk she didn't leave asterisk, Elena thought. Asterisk she ran dot asterisk. But she didn't say it. Instead, she opened the missile to the back cover. She angled it toward the light so he could see the scratched name, the date, the desperate pressure of the lines. Calder leaned closer. His breath caught. His fingers hovered over the leather, not touching. "She wrote that," he said. Not a question. Yes. Why would she write her name in a book worth more than she earned in a decade? Elena didn't have an answer. But she had the compact. She had the blood. She had the feeling, cold and certain, that her grandmother had not been a maid who quietly disappeared. She had been a woman with a secret. And Calder Winslow's grandfather had known what it was. The chandelier above the dance floor held 2,000 crystals. Elena had counted them earlier, between cataloguing sessions, when her eyes needed a break from the cramped script of the missal. 2,000. Each one hand-cut. Each one reflecting light that had been paid for in coal dust and textile mills and the labor of women whose names never made the papers. One of those crystals chose that moment to fall. It didn't plummet. It didn't crash. It simply let go of its copper mooring and dropped through 60 feet of cold air, spinning once, twice, catching the security lights in a slow wheel of brilliance. The sound it made when it hit the parquet was exactly like a wine glass dropped on slate. Elena flinched. Calder didn't move. His hand remained suspended over the book. His eyes remained fixed on the scratch name. The crystal lay on the dance floor, intact, perfect, winking up at them. "That happens," Calder said quietly. "The cold makes the fittings contract. My father used to say it was ghosts." Was he right? Calder looked at her. For the first time, something moved behind his eyes. Not warmth. Not grief. Just a flicker of connection, brief and fragile as a spider's thread. "I don't believe in ghosts," he said. "I believe in gravity." He picked up the bottle. He walked past her, down the balcony stairs, across the dance floor. He bent and retrieved the crystal. He held it up to the light, turning it between his thumb and forefinger. Elena followed. Not because she was supposed to. Not because it was her job. Because her grandmother had stood on this floor. Because her grandmother had danced with a man whose grandson now held a fallen star in his hand. "Mr. Winslow," she said. "Calder." He didn't turn. But he didn't leave either. "I'm not finished with the book," she said. "There are inscriptions I haven't deciphered. Bindings that need stabilization. The demolition is delayed," he said. "Indefinitely." He placed the crystal on the work table, next to her magnifying lamp, next to her pencil case, next to the photograph of her grandmother she kept tucked in the lid of her supply box. Then he walked toward the service entrance, his bear cuff swinging, his bottle empty, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous dark. Elena stood alone. She opened the compact. The 3 grains of blood were still there, dark as dried rose petals, dark as the name carved into leather. She closed it. Outside, the November wind pushed harder. The window rattled. The chandelier swayed, almost imperceptibly, its remaining 2,000 crystals singing a note too soft for human ears. And Elena Vasquez, keeper of graves, daughter of a woman who had never known her mother's true name, sat down in the abandoned ballroom and waited for dawn. Life has a way of bringing us to places we never expected to be. Elena came to Philadelphia to preserve a book. She found a question instead. Not a comfortable one. Not a simple one. But the kind of question that opens doors we didn't know existed. Sometimes the past hides in plain sight. Sometimes it falls from the ceiling like a single crystal, spinning through the dark, waiting for someone brave enough to pick it up. Elena picked it up. And the story, their story, was only beginning. Elena's breath stayed in her throat until her ears rang. She hadn't realized she'd been holding it. Not since the crystal hit the floor. Not since Calder Winslow walked out of the ballroom and left her standing alone with a book that held her grandmother's secret. Now, 3 weeks later, she understood. She wasn't leaving. December 2nd, 1978. The temperature dropped 14 degrees overnight. Elena woke to frost on the inside of her apartment windows and a message on her answering machine. The kind with the little cassette tapes, the kind that chewed them up if you looked at it wrong. Miss Vasquez. This is Patricia Winslow. I understand my son has delayed the demolition of the family property. I also understand you were present when he made this decision. I would appreciate a call. Elena did not call. Instead, she dressed in 3 layers, packed the missile in acid-free tissue, and took the Market Frankfurt line west. The train car smelled of wet wool and coffee. A man in a yellow raincoat slept with his head against the window, mouth open, breath fogging the glass. Elena counted stops. 3rd to 7th Street. 46th. 5th to 2nd. She got off at 59th and walked 6 blocks into a wind that cut straight through her grandmother's cardigan. The ballroom looked different in daylight. Grey. Smaller, somehow. The limestone facade was streaked with water stains that traced patterns like river deltas. A single plywood sheet covered the main entrance, but the service door, the one Calder had used, hung slightly open. Elena slipped inside. The heat was off. Her breath made clouds. The dance floor stretched before her, empty except for the work table and the fallen crystal, which she had placed in a small glass dish. It sat there now, catching the weak December light. And on the balcony, in the same spot as before, sat Calder Winslow. He wasn't drinking today. His hands were empty. He wore a coat, navy wool, good quality, buttoned wrong, and his hair looked like he'd been running his fingers through it for hours. You came back, he said. You didn't fire me. No. Elena set down her bag. She didn't climb the stairs. She stood on the dance floor, looking up at him, and waited. The demolition crew arrives at 6, Calder said. Tomorrow morning. My mother didn't delay it. I lied. Elena absorbed this. She thought about the train ride home. The warm apartment. The cat. The way her mother's voice sounded on the phone, distant and careful, whenever Elena asked about Philadelphia. Why? She said. Calder looked at the rose carved into the balustrade. His thumb found it, traced the petals. Because I didn't want to be alone. The snow started at 4:17 p.m. Elena knew the exact time because she had just wound her wristwatch, a Bulova her father gave her for high school graduation, and the minute hand was perfectly aligned with the 17. Outside, the first flakes drifted past the arched windows, hesitant at first, then insistent. By 5 o'clock, the service door was buried to the handle. By 6 o'clock, the phone lines went dead. Calder stood at the window, watching the streetlights flicker on. Each one bloomed orange through the blowing white. They won't make it through the bridge, he said. The Schuylkill Expressway always closes first. Elena didn't ask who he meant. The demolition crew. His mother. The lawyers. Whoever was supposed to arrive at dawn and reduce her grandmother's history to rubble. We need to find blankets, she said. And food. Is there a kitchen? Calder blinked at her. For a moment, he looked like a man waking from a long dream. Then he nodded once and led her through a door she hadn't noticed, hidden behind a faded tapestry of hunting dogs and horses. The Winslow Ballroom had a full catering kitchen. Stainless steel tables. Walk-in coolers. A 6-burner stove that had probably fed 500 people at a time. Now the coolers were empty except for a case of club soda and a wheel of Parmesan so old it had grown blue fur. But the pantry held canned tomatoes, olive oil, a bag of arborio rice. Who left this? Elena asked. My father. Calder touched a can of San Marzano tomatoes, rotated it so the label faced forward. He used to cook here. After my mother moved to the main line. He said restaurants were for people who didn't know how to be alone. Elena measured rice into a pot. She didn't ask what Arthur Winslow had been cooking the night he walked onto the east balcony. They ate in silence, sitting on the edge of the dance floor, their plates balanced on their knees. The risotto was too salty. Elena had never been good at measuring. Thank you, Calder said. Not polite. Just true. Elena nodded. The snow kept falling. By midnight, the temperature in the ballroom had dropped to 42 degrees. Elena could see her breath. So could Calder. They had burned the bar receipts first, 3 decades of bourbon deliveries and champagne orders, reduced to ash in a brass urn meant for palm fronds. The fire lasted 40 minutes. Then Calder fed at his father's ledgers. The smoke tasted like money turning to carbon. I should have sold this place, Calder said. He was crouched by the urn, feeding pages one at a time. After he died. I should have let them tear it down and built condos like everyone wanted. Why didn't you? He didn't answer. A page curled at the edges, caught flame, floated upward on the heat. Elena pulled her grandmother's cardigan tighter. The wool was thin at the elbows. She could feel the cold seeping through. There's another room, Calder said. Behind the portrait. I haven't opened it since I was a child. He didn't ask her to follow. He just stood and walked toward the main staircase, his footsteps echoing in the frozen air. Elena followed. The portrait of Marguerite Winslow hung in the east corridor. 5 feet tall, gilded frame, oil on canvas. She was young, maybe 20, with dark hair pinned high and eyes that held the camera like a dare. Her dress was sapphire blue. Her hands rested on the back of a carved chair. She was not wearing a maid's apron. My great-aunt, Calder said. Painted in 1918. My grandfather commissioned it for his 21st birthday. Asterisk, she was my grandmother asterisk, Elena thought. Asterisk, she taught me to make empanadas. She sang me lullabies in a language my mother refused to learn. Asterisk. She said nothing. Calder pressed the carved rose in the center of the frame. It clicked. The portrait swung open on hidden hinges. Behind it was a safe. Not a large one. Not the kind that holds jewelry or cash. This safe was the size of a bread box, painted the same cream as the wall, nearly invisible in the dim light. Calder spun the dial. Left, right, left. His hands knew the combination even if his mind had forgotten. The door opened. Inside, a dance card from 1919, complete, the pencil still attached by a silk cord. Inside, a lock of black hair tied with white ribbon. Inside, a newspaper cutting, yellowed and brittle, folded in 2/8. Elena's fingers trembled as she unfolded it. Asterisk fire at speakeasy claims 7 lives asterisk. Asterisk July the 5th, 1919 asterisk. Asterisk authorities continue to investigate the blaze that destroyed the Blue Parrot Club in the early hours of July 4th. Among the injured, Miss Marguerite Winslow, 21, of Rittenhouse Square. Miss Winslow was treated at Pennsylvania Hospital and released. Also among the survivors, Miss Angelina Rossi, 19, whose condition is listed as critical. Asterisk. Asterisk Miss Rossi died at 4:17 a.m. Asterisk. Elena stopped reading. Angelina Rossi. A. Rossi. The same name etched into her grandmother's compact in letters, so faint she had needed a magnifying glass to find them. The same name her mother whispered on All Saints' Day, lighting candles for people she had never met. Your grandmother lied to you, Calder said. His voice was quiet, not cruel, just a man stating a fact that had settled between them like the snow outside. Elena didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat had closed around a name she had never spoken aloud. Angelina. She looked at the dance card. The names were written in two different hands, one elegant, slanted, clearly female, the other bold, impatient, masculine. The foxtrot. The waltz. The one step. Beside each dance, a name. Winslow. Winslow. Rossi. And in the margin, squeezed between the last dance and the edge of the card, 3 words in a handwriting Elena recognized. Forgive me, M. The snow stopped at dawn. Elena watched it from the east balcony, the same rail where Arthur Winslow had placed his hands 9 months ago. The city was silent. White. Clean in a way Philadelphia never was. Calder stood beside her. He had found his father's watch in the safe, buried beneath the dance card and the newsprint. He wound it now, 3 turns, the way his father had taught him. I don't know what happened that night, he said. My grandfather never spoke of it. My father didn't either. Elena held the dance card. The pencil was still attached, the silk cord frayed but intact. Marguerite had saved this, had hidden it behind her own portrait, had carried the weight of July 4th, 1919, for 60 years. And then she had left Philadelphia, changed her name, built a new life in a country that didn't know her grief. She was my grandmother, Elena said. The words hung in the frozen air. Calder didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't look surprised. I know, he said. Elena turned to face him. How long have you known? Since the night we met. You have her eyes. The portrait, it's like looking at you. He didn't say it like a compliment. He said it like a fact. Like the snow. Like the watch ticking in his palm. Elena should have been angry. He had known. All those weeks, and he had never said a word. But she had known too. About the compact. About the blood. About the name her grandmother buried and the secret she carried to her grave. Neither of them had spoken. Neither of them had trusted the other with the truth. And yet here they stood, on the balcony where his father had died, holding the evidence of a fire that had burned through 2 families and never stopped smoldering. What do we do now? Elena asked. Calder looked at the dance card, at his father's watch, at the city waking beneath its blanket of white. We find out what really happened, he said, and then we decide what to do with it. Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive in a single moment. Sometimes it comes in pieces. A dance card. A newspaper clipping. A lock of hair tied with white silk. Elena came to Philadelphia to preserve a book. She found a fire that had been burning for 60 years. And she found a man who had been standing in its ashes, waiting for someone to see the smoke. The snow was melting now. The service door would be dug out by noon. The demolition crew would arrive, and Calder would send them away again, and the phone lines would hum back to life with lawyers and mothers and questions Elena wasn't ready to answer. But for now, in the quiet of the morning, she stood beside a stranger who was becoming something else. Something neither of them had a name for yet. And she opened her grandmother's compact one more time. The blood was still there. 3 grains, dark as rose petals. But now Elena knew whose blood it was. And she knew, finally, where to look next. Elena vomited in the staff lavatory, her forehead pressed against a tile shaped like a seashell. The porcelain was cold. The room smelled of bleach and rust. Somewhere above her, a pipe hummed with water she couldn't see. She stayed there on her knees for a long time, her grandmother's compact digging into her palm through the pocket of her coat. She had not opened it since that morning on the balcony. She was not sure she ever could again. January 1979. The thaw came slowly, reluctantly, like a guest who had overstayed but refused to leave. Elena watched it from her apartment window, dirty snow sliding off rooftops, gutters running brown with meltwater, the grey sky pressing down on Spruce Street like a lid. She had not been to the ballroom in 3 weeks. She had not returned Calder's calls. Her cat, A fat orange tabby named Cervantes had knocked over a vase on the windowsill 3 days ago. Water had soaked the floorboards. The wood had swollen, buckled, left a dark stain shaped like South America. Elena looked at it every morning. She did not clean it. She did not clean much of anything. The missile sat on her desk, wrapped in acid-free tissue. She had not opened it either. Marguerite's name was still scratched into the leather. Angelina's blood was still under the compact's mirror. The dance card was in her nightstand drawer, pressed between pages of a book she wasn't reading. She was 24 years old. She had spent her adult life learning to preserve the past, how to stabilize paper, mend leather, slow the rot of time. But no one had taught her what to do when the past bit back. The phone rang. She let it ring. The answering machine clicked on. Her own voice, cheerful and professional. Asterisk, you've reached Elena Vasquez at Vasquez Conservation. Please leave a message. Asterisk. A pause. Then Calder's voice, rougher than she remembered. The will has a codicil. I need your help. The machine beeped. The tape kept turning. Elena stared at the water stain on her floor. She thought about her grandmother's hands, thin, liver-spotted, always smelling of olive oil and rosewater. She thought about the lullabies Marguerite had sung in a language Elena's mother refused to teach her. She picked up the phone. The Winslow estate lawyers occupied the entire 12th floor of a building on Walnut Street. Marble lobby, brass elevators, a receptionist with perfect posture and a telephone headset that looked like it cost more than Elena's monthly rent. Calder was already there. He wore a suit that fit properly now, navy, white shirt, the onyx cufflinks fastened, but his eyes were the same. Hollow. Searching. They won't release the trust without the biography, he said. My father started it. The research is in the Ballroom archives. But the codicil requires a family artifact to unseal the final documents. Something owned by a Winslow before 1920. Elena heard what he wasn't saying. I have an artifact, she said. The compact. Yes. It belonged to your grandmother. It belonged to Angelina Rossi first. Calder was quiet. The receptionist's fingers clicked on her keyboard. Somewhere down the hall, a copy machine whirred to life. If we use it, he said, the lawyers will ask questions. They'll want to know how you came to possess it. They'll want to know who Marguerite Winslow really was. I know. It will become public. Everything. The fire. The names. Your grandmother's secret. Elena looked at the compact in her hands. The silver was warm from her palm. The mirror was scratched. The 3 grains of blood were still there, hidden behind the glass. My grandmother lied to me my entire life, Elena said. She told me we came from Spain. Olive trees. A blue door. She told me her name was Vasquez. She told me her parents died in the influenza pandemic and she came to America alone. She paused. The words sat heavy in her throat. She wasn't alone. She had Angelina. And she left her behind. Calder didn't speak. He didn't try to comfort her. He just waited. Maybe the truth should be public, Elena said. Maybe secrets are just graves we dig for ourselves. They returned to the ballroom together. The archives were in the basement, a cramped, windowless room lined with filing cabinets and the smell of old paper. Calder's father had organized everything by year, then by event, then by the names of the dead. Wedding invitations. Funeral programs. A menu from the 1955 charity ball, signed by Grace Kelly. And one filing cabinet, locked, labeled asterisk 1880-1920, private. Asterisk. The key was in Calder's pocket. He had found it in his father's study, taped to the underside of the same desk where Arthur Winslow had written his final notes. Are you ready? Calder asked. No, Elena said. He unlocked the drawer. Inside, photographs. Dozens of them, black and white, edges curled with age. Elena lifted the first one with trembling hands. Marguerite, 19, in her maid's apron. Standing in this very ballroom, a feather duster in one hand, laughing at something off camera. Marguerite, 20, in a blue dress Elena recognized from the portrait. standing beside a girl with dark hair and a shy smile. Angelina Rossi. They were holding hands. Elena turned the photograph over. Ink, faded but legible. *M+A, July 3, 1919. The night before everything changed. She turned to the next photograph. The Winslow family, posed in front of the ballroom's main entrance. Calder's great-grandfather, stiff and stern. His wife, unsmiling. And a young man, Calder's grandfather, Charles Winslow, standing apart from the others, his gaze fixed on someone outside the frame. Elena looked closer. His hand was raised. Half wave, half salute. She followed his gaze. In the background, barely visible through the glass of the service door, two figures. One in a maid's apron. One in a plain dark dress. Marguerite and Angelina. Charles Winslow was not looking at the camera. He was looking at them. He loved her, Elena breathed. Your grandfather. He loved my grandmother. Calder took the photograph. His thumb traced the outline of his grandfather's face. Then why did he? He stopped. Couldn't finish. Why did he set the fire? Why did he kill the woman Marguerite loved? Why did Marguerite spend 60 years running from a name that wasn't hers? Elena had no answers. Only more photographs. More questions. More weight pressing down on her chest. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay on the floor of her apartment. She had stopped using the bed 3 days ago, and stared at the ceiling. Cervantes curled on her stomach, purring. The water stain on the floorboards stared back at her, dark and patient. At 2:17 a.m., she got up. She walked to the bathroom. She turned on the light. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her grandmother's face looked back. Same dark hair, streaked now with grey she hadn't noticed before. Same high cheekbones. Same mouth, generous, stubborn, prone to silence. Who are you? Elena thought. The woman in the mirror didn't answer. She thought about Marguerite, 19 years old, scrubbing floors in a ballroom where she would never dance. Falling in love with a girl who wore a maid's apron and smelled of lavender. Learning to hide. Learning to lie. Learning to survive. She thought about Angelina, whose blood was still trapped under a mirror, whose name had been erased from every record, whose grave, if she even had one, Elena had never visited. She thought about Charles Winslow, who had loved and destroyed in equal measure, who had built a monument to his own guilt and called it a biography. And she thought about herself. Elena Vasquez, conservator of books, keeper of other people's histories. She had spent her career preserving the past because it was safer than examining her own. Her grandmother had lied to her. But Elena had lied too. She had told herself she came to Philadelphia for the missile. She had told herself her interest was professional. She had told herself the compact was just a memento. She had told herself she wasn't looking for a woman who had been dead for 60 years. The mirror showed her the truth. You came here because you never knew her. Because your mother refused to speak of her. Because the silence in your family was louder than any story Marguerite ever told. You came here to find yourself. And now that you have, you don't know what to do. The phone rang at 7 a.m. Elena was still sitting on the bathroom floor. The mirror had fogged over hours ago. She hadn't moved. Elena. Calder's voice. Strained. My mother called the lawyers. She's petitioning to have the trust dissolved. She says the biography is a waste of time and the ballroom should be sold. Elena closed her eyes. She's bringing a team tomorrow. Archivists. Appraisers. They're going to box up everything and put it in storage. We'll lose access. The photographs, the letters, the dance card. Your grandfather's medal, Elena said. What? The fire medal. The one your grandfather received for his actions at the Blue Parrot. You said it was in your mother's safe deposit box. A pause. Yes. She's never let you see it. No. Elena stood up. Her legs were stiff. Her reflection in the fogged mirror was a ghost. Then we stop waiting for permission, she said. Tomorrow morning, You go to the bank. You tell them your mother authorized the release. You bring me that medal. And if she finds out? Then she finds out. Elena's voice was steadier than she felt. But I'm done letting the dead decide what the living are allowed to know. June 1979. 6 months since the blizzard. 6 months since Elena had knelt on a bathroom floor and faced her own reflection. The ballroom had changed. So had she. The roof still leaked. The parquet still buckled. But now there were books on the work tables, photographs pinned to corkboards, timelines scrawled on butcher paper and taped to the walls. The archives had become a war room. Calder sat across from her, the fire medal gleaming in his palm. It was smaller than Elena expected. Bronze, not gold. Engraved with a single date, July the 4th, 1919. On the back, 3 words. For conspicuous bravery. He had retrieved it that morning. His mother's banker had hesitated, but Calder had signed the release form with his father's fountain pen, and the medal was his. Now it sat between them, heavy with history. The receipt, Calder said. The one you found in the compact. It proves my grandfather bought kerosene the night of the fire. Yes. And the dance card proves he was with Marguerite and Angelina that evening. Yes. The photographs prove he loved Marguerite. And she loved Angelina. Elena nodded. Calder was quiet for a long time. His thumb traced the medal's edge, back and forth, back and forth. He didn't save anyone, he said finally. He bought the kerosene. He started the fire. And then he walked into the burning building and carried out the woman he loved while the woman she loved died alone in the basement. Elena said nothing. There was nothing to say. And then he spent the rest of his life pretending to be a hero. Calder's voice cracked. He married another woman. He had children. He built this ballroom into a monument to his own name. And every year on July 4th, he pinned this medal to his chest and accepted congratulations for his bravery. He set the medal on the table. It caught the light, gleamed dully. He was a coward, Calder said. And I have spent my entire life trying to be him. And then Elena realized that was the lie. Not the fire. Not the compact. Not even Angelina's blood. The lie was that Calder Winslow was mourning his father. He wasn't. He was terrified of becoming his grandfather. Mirrors show us what we look like. They don't show us who we are. Elena had spent 6 months chasing her grandmother's ghost. She had followed Marguerite's name through archives and photographs, through a fire that burned 7 people alive, through a compact that held the blood of a woman who had no grave. She had found the truth. But the truth had not set her free. It had simply given her a choice. She could bury it again. She could walk away from the ballroom, from Calder, from the weight of a history that was never hers to carry. She could go back to preserving books and pretending the past stayed safely between their covers. Or she could hold the mirror up to someone else. Calder was looking at her. His eyes were the same as the night they met, hollow, searching, waiting for someone to tell him who he was supposed to be. I chose the dead, Elena said. The words hung in the air between them. Calder didn't ask which dead. He didn't ask if she meant her grandmother, or Angelina, or the 7 strangers who died in a fire 60 years ago. He just nodded once and picked up the medal. Outside, the summer heat pressed against the ballroom windows. The chandelier swayed gently in the breeze from a broken pane. 2,000 crystals caught the light and scattered it across the dance floor. Elena opened her grandmother's compact. The mirror was still scratched. The blood was still there. But when she looked at her reflection, she didn't see Marguerite anymore. She saw herself. And for the first time in 6 months, she knew what she had to do. Elena heated the compact over a candle until the silver blackened. She wasn't sure if it would work. The compact was nearly 70 years old. The hinge was loose, the clasp weak, the mirror fogged at the edges. But her grandmother had taught her something important, all those years ago in a kitchen that smelled of garlic and patience. Heat loosens what time has sealed. The silver turned amber, then smoke grey, then black. Elena held it with tweezers, watching the soot bloom across the surface. Her fingers trembled. The candle flame swayed. A soft click, The mirror loosened. Elena set the compact down. She waited for it to cool. Outside, the June sun was setting over the Winslow ballroom, painting the water-stained limestone in shades of gold and rose. Calder was upstairs, pacing the balcony, waiting for his mother to arrive. Waiting for Elena to decide how this story would end. She picked up her palette knife, the same one she used for lifting fragile parchment from rotting bindings, and slid the blade beneath the mirror's edge. The glass came free with a sound like a held breath. Behind it, folded into a square smaller than a postage stamp, was the receipt. Elena unfolded it with her tweezers. The paper was charred at the edges, brittle as a dead leaf. The ink had faded to brown, but the words were still legible. Asterisk 1 gallon kerosene. $0.18. Asterisk. Asterisk July the 3rd, 1919. Asterisk. Asterisk paid in full. See Winslow. Asterisk. She had known it was there. She had known since the night she first pried the mirror loose, 6 months ago, and seen the edge of the paper peeking through. But she had folded it back into its hiding place. She had closed the compact. She had buried the truth beneath glass and silver and her own fear. Not anymore. Elena placed the receipt on the velvet mat beside the dance card, the photographs, the medal. 7 pieces of evidence. 60 years of silence. It was time. The door to the ballroom opened at 7 p.m. Patricia Winslow did not enter so much as arrive. She was 63 years old, 5 feet 2 inches tall, and she filled every room she walked into like she owned it, which, technically, she still did. Her suit was dove grey. Her pearls were real. Her heels clicked across the parquet with the precision of a metronome. Behind her came the lawyers. 2 of them, both men, both carrying leather briefcases that probably cost more than Elena's car. Behind them, an archivist from the Historical Society, a woman Elena recognized from a preservation conference 3 years ago. Behind her, a man with a notebook and a camera, the Asterisk Inquirer star. Elena had called him this morning. Patricia Winslow stopped in the center of the dance floor. She looked at the corkboards covered in photographs, the timeline scrawled on butcher paper, the books and documents spread across every available surface. Her expression did not change. "Mr. Winslow," she said, "explain this." Calder stood at the bottom of the balcony stairs. His hands were at his sides. His face was calm. "Mother, thank you for coming. Your message said it was urgent." Patricia's gaze swept the room, landed on Elena, dismissed her. "I see you've been busy." "I've been learning," Calder said, "about our family, about my grandfather, about what really happened on July 4th, 1919. Something flickered across Patricia's face. It was there and gone in a heartbeat, a shadow, a tremor, the briefest crack in 60 years of composure. "That fire was a tragedy," she said. "Your grandfather was a hero. The medal proves it." "The medal proves he was there," Calder said. "It doesn't prove what he did." Patricia was very still. Elena stepped forward. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, but her voice was steady. "Mrs. Winslow, my name is Elena Vasquez. Marguerite Winslow was my grandmother." Patricia looked at her. Really looked, this time. Her gaze traveled from Elena's dark hair to her high cheekbones to the stubborn set of her mouth. "I know who you are," she said. "I had you investigated the night my son delayed the demolition." Elena hadn't expected that. She heard Calder inhale sharply. "Your grandmother was a maid in this house," Patricia continued. "She left Philadelphia in 1919 under circumstances I do not care to revisit. She changed her name, married a Spanish immigrant, and built a new life. Whatever she told you about the Winslow family." "She told me nothing," Elena said. "That's the problem." She picked up the dance card from the velvet mat. Her hands were steady now. "Your grandfather-in-law, Charles Winslow, bought 1 gallon of kerosene on July 3rd, 1919. The next morning, the Blue Parrot Club burned to the ground. 7 people died. One of them was Angelina Rossi." She set the dance card down, picked up the photograph of Marguerite and Angelina, holding hands, smiling at the camera. "Charles Winslow loved my grandmother. But my grandmother loved Angelina. And on the night of the fire, Charles made a choice. Patricia's jaw tightened. You have no proof. I have his signature on a receipt for kerosene. A receipt proves nothing. He could have purchased it for any number of reasons. He could have, Elena agreed. But he didn't. Because if he had, he wouldn't have spent the next 40 years paying for Marguerite Winslow's silence. Silence. The lawyers shifted uncomfortably. The archivist was very carefully not looking at anyone. The man from the *Inquirer* was writing in his notebook. Patricia Winslow said nothing. He gave her money, Elena continued. Enough to start a new life. Enough to buy a new name. Enough to never speak of Philadelphia again. My grandmother didn't leave because she wanted to. She left because Charles Winslow made her a deal. Another photograph. Marguerite, age 45, standing in front of a small house in Cordoba. A blue door. Olive trees. The life she had built from the ashes of the one she'd lost. He paid for her silence, Elena said. And she kept his secret for 60 years. But she didn't forget. She kept the compact. She kept the receipt. She kept Angelina's blood under the mirror, because it was the only piece of her she had left. She looked at Patricia, at Calder, at all the people standing on the dance floor where her grandmother had once swept dust into a pan. I'm done keeping secrets, Elena said. My grandmother was a victim. But she was also a woman who loved another woman in a time when that love could have destroyed her. She survived. She built a life. She raised a family. And she never stopped grieving. She picked up the compact. The silver was still warm from the candle. Angelina Rossi deserves to be remembered. Not as a victim. Not as a footnote. As a person who lived and loved and died too young. And Charles Winslow deserves to be remembered for what he really was. She set the compact on the velvet mat, next to the receipt, next to the medal. Not a hero. A man who made a terrible choice and spent the rest of his life trying to outrun it. Patricia Winslow did not speak for a long time. The lawyers looked at each other. The archivist adjusted her glasses. The man from the *Inquirer* kept writing. Calder stood perfectly still, watching his mother. Finally, Patricia walked to the corkboard. She studied the photographs, the timeline, the receipts, the dance card, the medal. Her reflection ghosted across the glass of a framed newspaper clipping. My husband, she said, loved his father very much. Her voice was different now. Softer. Older. He believed everything Charles told him. The heroism. The bravery. The medal. She touched the bronze disc with one manicured finger. When Arthur tried to write his biography, he kept finding inconsistencies. Receipts that didn't match. Dates that didn't line up. Names that appeared and disappeared without explanation. She turned to face her son. He told me once that he wasn't sure who his father really was. He said the man he grew up admiring might have been a stranger. And then he stopped talking about it. Calder's voice was barely a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want you to carry the same doubt. Patricia's eyes were bright, but she did not cry. Charles Winslow was dead. Arthur was dead. The truth would not bring them back. It would only hurt the living. Elena thought about her grandmother. About all the years Marguerite had spent pretending to be someone else. About the lullabies in a language Elena's mother refused to learn. The truth doesn't just hurt, Elena said. It heals. But only if you let it. Patricia looked at her. Really looked. You have your grandmother's eyes, she said. And her stubbornness. So I've been told. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, Patricia Winslow's mouth curved into something that was almost a smile. She used to sneak books from the library, Patricia said. My mother-in-law told me. Marguerite would hide them under her apron and read them by candlelight after the family went to bed. She had a particular fondness for poetry. Elena's throat tightened. I didn't know that. She was fired, eventually. My mother-in-law suspected her of stealing. But Charles intervened. He said Marguerite was the best maid they'd ever had and he would vouch for her character. Patricia paused. I always thought that was strange. Charles was not known for defending servants. He wasn't defending a servant, Calder said quietly. He was defending the woman he loved. Yes, Patricia said. I believe he was. The man from the Inquirer cleared his throat. Mrs. Winslow, do you have any comment on the evidence presented here today? Patricia looked at the receipt, the dance card, the photographs, the medal. I have a great many comments, she said, but none of them are for publication at this time. She picked up her purse. She walked to the door. She paused with her hand on the frame. Mr. Winslow, she said, without turning around, the trust is yours. The ballroom is yours. The truth is yours. Do with it what you will. And then she was gone. The lawyers followed. The archivist murmured something about returning tomorrow. The man from the Inquirer asked Elena a question she didn't quite hear. She answered anyway, some polite nothing, and then the door closed and the ballroom was quiet again. Calder sat down on the edge of the dance floor. His hands were shaking. She knew, he said. All this time. She knew. She was protecting you, Elena said. From what? From the same thing my grandmother was protecting me from. The weight of a truth she wasn't ready to carry. Calder looked at the medal in his palm. The bronze was warm from his mother's touch. I don't know who I am anymore, he said. I spent 32 years trying to be my father, trying to be my grandfather, trying to be worthy of a legacy that was built on a lie. Elena sat down beside him. The parquet was cool through her skirt. You're not your grandfather, she said. You're not your father. You're just a man who found a receipt in a compact and didn't look away. Calder was quiet for a long time. Then, what do we do now? Elena looked at the corkboard, at the photographs, the documents, the timeline that stretched from 1919 to now, at the compact, open on the velvet mat, its mirror reflecting the evening sky. We tell the story, she said. All of it. The fire, the love, the grief, the choices people made and the secrets they kept. We tell it the way it really happened. And then we let it go. Calder picked up the compact. His thumb traced the scratched silver, the empty space where the mirror used to be. She would have liked you, he said. Marguerite. Elena thought about her grandmother, about the lullabies, the olive trees, the blue door, about the name scratched into leather and the blood hidden under glass. She would have liked you too, Elena said. You remind her of someone. The chandelier swayed gently in the evening breeze. 2,000 crystals caught the last light of the setting sun and scattered it across the dance floor in 1,000 tiny rainbows. Elena stood at the east balcony, looking out at the city. The Schuylkill River gleamed silver in the distance. The streetlights were beginning to flicker on, one by one. Calder stood beside her. His father's watch was on his wrist. His grandfather's medal was in his pocket. I should have done this months ago, he said. Faced her. Faced the truth. You weren't ready. And now? Elena didn't answer. She was thinking about her grandmother's hands, thin and warm, holding a silver compact that held the blood of a woman she had loved and lost. Now we have a choice, she said. We can let the past define us, or we can define ourselves. Below them, on the dance floor, the compact caught the light. Its mirror was gone, but its silver still gleamed. I chose the dead asterisk, Elena had told Calder. But that wasn't quite right. She had chosen the truth. And the truth, messy, painful, beautiful, was finally ready to be spoken. Tomorrow, Calder said, I'm calling the Historical Society. I'm donating the archives. The receipts, the photographs, the dance card. All of it. And the medal. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the medal stays with me. Not as a symbol of heroism. As a reminder. Of what? That bravery isn't about running into burning buildings. He looked at her. It's about facing what you've done and choosing to be better. Elena nodded. She understood. The sun dipped below the skyline. The ballroom filled with shadows. Somewhere, a loose window rattled in its frame. "Thank you," Calder said. "For what?" "For not looking away." Elena thought about the night they met. The falling crystal. The book in her hands. The compact warm against her palm. "I didn't have a choice," she said. "She was my grandmother." But that wasn't quite true either. She had a choice. Every step of the way, she had a choice. And every time, she chose to keep going. Because Marguerite hadn't been able to tell her own story. Angelina had been erased from every record. 7 people had died in a fire that was never properly investigated. And the truth, the whole, complicated, human truth, had been buried for 60 years. But secrets, Elena had learned, were like seeds. You could bury them deep. You could cover them with earth and pretend they didn't exist. But given enough time, enough pressure, enough light, they would always find a way to grow. The compact lay on the dance floor, silver gleaming in the dark. Tomorrow, Elena would pick it up. She would have the mirror replaced. She would keep it on her desk, next to her magnifying lamp and her pencil case and the photograph of her grandmother laughing in front of a blue door. But tonight, she let it be. Tonight, she stood on the balcony beside a man who was learning to forgive himself, and she watched the city lights blink on one by one. Tomorrow, the story would be told. Tonight, there was only the quiet hum of the chandelier, the distant sound of traffic on the Schuylkill Expressway, and the weight of 60 years finally beginning to lift. ***, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is tell the truth. ***. Not because it's easy. Not because it will fix everything. But because secrets are heavy, and carrying them alone will break you. Elena came to Philadelphia to preserve a book. She found a story that had been waiting 60 years to be told. And she found a man who had been standing in the dark, waiting for someone to turn on the light. She didn't save him. He didn't save her. They saved each other. And that, more than medals, more than memories, more than the weight of generations, was enough. The compact caught the moonlight now, silver and soft. Elena left it there, reflecting the sky, and walked down the balcony stairs. Tomorrow, the story would begin. But tonight, for the first time in 60 years, the silence was peaceful.